the wisdom of generations of women to help you have more joy every day. The Wisdom Coalition program begins right now.
In a society where there's so much consumerism, it could be easy to get caught up in trying to look like or speak like or act like somebody else.
If you're not in touch with your authentic self, it's really hard to be authentically happy in a long-term, meaningful way.
Do you know who you really are?
Welcome to the Wisdom Coalition program. I'm Nancy Wertine.
And I'm Kim Howie. Thanks for joining us.
You know, it's a question that many of us struggle with at different times in our lives, trying to figure out exactly who we really are.
And you know, we play so many different roles in our lives that it can be difficult to find our true selves.
Yeah, it can be hard to dial in because we're doing so much, and it can be especially challenging when life changes everything.
From her days on a full basketball scholarship to Iowa State University, Melanie Bolden has been a leader. She built a stunning career in marketing over the past 20 years that has taken her around the globe and elbow to elbow with the likes of Oprah Winfrey. She married Michael, the love of her life, and had a daughter. But with success comes challenges. A serious car accident for Melanie and Michael's tragic death in a hit-and-run car accident. It has been in these times that Melanie has grappled for her footing in her search for her authentic self.
Melanie Bolden joins us now. She is Senior Vice President of Global Marketing for Crayola. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you both for having me. Happy to be here.
Oh, that's great. Well, and you know, this topic that we're talking about, finding our authentic self, it sounds like it should be easy, right? But then we tend to put on these masks or wear these different personas, you know, depending on the role that we're playing in our life. And, you know, sometimes then it gets confusing to figure out who we really are. You know, can you talk about how you've approached finding your authentic self throughout your life?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's a tough question. And I think I have to reflect on kind of how I grew up. My father's career required that my family and I move around a lot. And that meant new cities, new communities, new schools. I was an athlete, so new teams to acclimate to. And when you're trying to integrate into something new, it requires you to adapt to change quickly. But it also requires you to adjust to the nuances of the different climates or the different communities that you're trying to integrate into. And what I found is that, and I learned this very quickly early on, that if I didn't stay grounded and true to who I was, then I would have easily been swayed by the opinions and perceptions and influences of others.
And what about, you know, those changes that we go through in our lives, but also tragedies, like in your case? How do you get through that? Because I think when those things happen, our sense of self is shaken a little bit. Who are we really? Who are we now in light of this new information? So how have you been able to assimilate that in your journey?
Yeah, you know, tragedy is part of life, and I've had my share of it. And there's been two things in particular that have happened to me, or two life events that have happened to me that have really had a profound impact on me. The first is when I was 17 years old. My friend and I, she was driving and I was riding in the passenger seat. And we were driving on a country road, and she ended up losing control of the car. We spun around a couple of times and then ended up hitting a tree and then falling off the road onto the side of the mountain, tumbling several times and then falling into the bottom of the ravine. The second one, I would say, that has had the most profound impact on me and really made me do some deep soul searching about who I am and where I want to go next, was in regards to the death of Michael. For me, at the end of the day, I realized two things. I realized that faith can get you through anything. And then the second thing I realized is that you talk about being your authentic self. I had all the skills and the abilities needed to get through that difficult time. And if I didn't have them innately in me, I had the abilities to go out and get what I needed, whether it was a support group or childcare help or whatever it may be, to get through that difficult time.
Thank you so much for being with us, Melanie. We will be speaking with you again later in the show.
But you can go to our website, thewisdomcoalition.com, and join the conversation online.
But first, more reflections on this topic from our Well of Wisdom.
So there's individual pressure in your life, classes, homework, jobs, but there's also an overall cultural pressure, ways you feel like you're supposed to look, things you think you're supposed to do, some sort of model of what you think your life is supposed to look like. And I think that often it's hard for 20-something women to find out who they really are and who they really want to be.
Welcome back. Our next guest says she went on a personal journey to find herself.
Lisa Bien is the author of 2 books, Life Happens, Bounce Back, and Divorce Happens, Bounce Back. Thanks for being with us, Lisa.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me today.
You also teach public relations at Temple University and have your own TV show there, so you know all about doing this.
Yes, I know.
This is easy for you.
This is fun.
So why do you think this subject of finding our authentic selves is so important, especially for women?
Well, I think it's especially important for everybody. I mean, especially for women, but I do think it's key that we all take time to get to know who we are. Because when we truly love and find out who we are, then we can handle all the other things that life throws our way, right? So life is constantly throwing adversity towards us. And every single day we're playing different hats. I'm a mom, I'm a teacher, you know. I have to know who I am, though, at my core. So I think we need to identify who we are first and foremost, before we can be successful at all the other roles that we play.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in your book, you talk about your self-love philosophy and your 4-step bounce back into you plan. Can you talk about that a little?
I'd be happy to. First of all, self-love philosophy is about this. It's okay to love yourself. In fact, we have to all give ourselves permission to love ourselves. And I tell people all the time, treat yourself like your own best friend. Don't say something that you wouldn't say to your own best friend. Be kind to yourself. Be compassionate to yourself. We deserve it. If we don't take care of who we are, who's taking care of us, right? So my bounce back plan is 4 steps, and people are always like, well, it sounds really simple. I'm like, no, it's really not. And I don't like to say it's hard, but I like to say that it's worth it, right? So the first time is, you've ever been in a situation where you say, God, I've been in this situation before, right? You need to get clarity. Why do you keep finding yourself in this situation, okay? The second step is get real. Okay, so you're like, well, what's the difference between get real and get clarity? Well, get real is dig deep and find out what's the real issue, because 9 out of 10 times it's you. You know, when you say, I don't really like that person, she blah, blah so much, well, look at your own self, right? And then the third step is to make a plan. Where do you want to go? How do you want to get there? We do that in business.
Yep.
So often we don't do that in life. We think about how we want to get there, but we don't make a plan. And little steps. If you want to lose weight, make a plan for that weight loss, right? And then the 4th step, which I think is the hardest step, is to get going. Like, do it, put it into action, right?
Follow the plan.
And if life was that easy, right, nobody would need to self-help books, right?
You know, when I was thinking about this show, I was thinking about that line from Shakespeare, right? To thine own self be true, right? If that doesn't say how timeless this subject is and how many decades we've talked about this.
It's true, and we've been taught, I think women especially have been taught that we don't want to talk about all our success. We only want to talk about what didn't work, our job that we didn't get, but how about all the things that we did do really well? So oftentimes I run seminars and I ask people to start out and I'll say, write down 10 things that you love about you. 10 things. And oftentimes people have such a challenge finding what they love about themselves. Telling me what they don't like, telling me what they wish their life was like, was much easier than telling me who they are. So I think it's really important that everybody really remembers that it's important to know who you are, love who you are, and give yourself permission to be who you want to be. Be your authentic self is really key to life.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being with us, Lisa. Stay put, because Melanie will be joining us when we come back.
Great.
But first, some more reflections on this topic from our Well of Wisdom.
We're constantly under a barrage of opinions about how we should be, what our authentic self is.
But we're all unique and individual, and I believe, just like puzzle pieces, if we were to be okay with who we are as a person, then we could see how we could benefit one another and help each other to grow.
Welcome back. Lisa and Melanie join us now to continue the conversation. You know that studies show that the more we live on the surface of our identity, the less we're in touch with our deeper selves. And if we're not in touch with our true selves, those same studies say we can't find true happiness. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. I think that once we find our true self, it's when we find a greater level of happiness, right? So you think you're happy, right? I think most of us think we're happy on a regular basis with our current life. And then we go on that self journey and we find out who we are. And then we go, this is what real happiness is like. So I think it increases tremendously.
Yeah, and just to build on the point that you made, the self journey is important. You have to do the work. I mean, really have to understand what those core values are that are true to you, that will truly make you happy.
It's interesting you say that because when I wrote my book, everyone said, stop saying it's so hard. Because in my book, I talk about this is hard. And someone called me one day and they said, take that word hard out of your book right now. You're never going to sell a book. Nobody wants to buy a book that says hard. And I said, it is though. You're right. If you don't want to invest the time in yourself, who are you going to invest the time in? Yeah. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and so what advice would you give to people who are struggling to identify their authentic self?
Take the time, right? Go on the journey. I always say go on the journey. I had the best journey ever. I took 3 years and I said, this is my time. This is my journey. And she's like looking at me, why'd you identify that? Because 3 years was at a time in my life that I felt that things weren't going the way that they should. They weren't going the way that I wanted. I admire you. You seem to always have known who you were at your core. I wasn't. So I think it's interesting. I think the first thing I would do is start journaling your life, start seeing patterns, you know, think about what you like to do. Write a list of 10 things you've never done before. You know, I'm very goal oriented, so write goals. You know, did you always want to take yoga? Go to yoga. Have you always wanted to, you know, try something? Try something for you and figure out who you are. I think there's a great exercise I always tell people to do is do a 360 and ask people who you are. Do a personal survey. We do reviews at work. We all do reviews at work. Our strengths, our weaknesses, what could be worked on. Let's do that as people. Let's do that for ourselves.
Melanie, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think the point about goals is really important. I think when you set goals and objectives for yourself, there's a level of comfort that comes from that because then you have a roadmap. And when you know the direction that you're going, there's a level of optimism because even though you might not know exactly what's going to happen in your life, you definitely feel the comfort of knowing you're heading in the right direction that is true to who you want to become and is centered around your core values.
And what about the role of change? You know, that's something that we've talked about before, but we have these goals, maybe, but then something happens. So change, I think, and adapting to change is part of this conversation. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree 100%. I think you have to be open to change. Yeah. I think so many of us think that I'm making a plan, this is my roadmap, and this is how it's going to happen. That's not how it happens. You know, what's the expression? We make plans and God laughs at them. And I think, right? Yeah. It's true. And I think you made an excellent point when you were speaking earlier that God and have faith and have hope and all these wonderful things that are so important. Don't lose sight of that. And then if you're going down this road and you get a bump, that's all it is. It's a bump. So, you know, ask for help if you need help. Don't ever be afraid to ask for help. I think that's a lesson that we all need to remember is that, especially when we're going down a new road, when we make change in our life, it can be uncomfortable. You know, we set boundaries, it's uncomfortable because all of a sudden we're saying no. I had to learn the word no. That was really hard. No is a full sentence. We're allowed to use it. Give yourself permission to use it.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much to both of you for joining us.
And you know, this topic of knowing who we are, we talk about that all the time at the Wisdom Coalition. We feel that it's important to know who you are to find more joy in your life.
Yeah, and you can find out more at our website, thewisdomcoalition.com. But we'll be right back in a moment with a fun tip in the kitchen to make your true self sparkle.
I like to think of your authentic self as a very, very, very quiet little voice that exists within in a very, very noisy world. So you have to create opportunities to create a space, that quiet, quiet little space where you can listen and you can hear that authentic self.
I believe that finding our authentic self is hard and is not who we are. Is more who we become.
Welcome back. You know, sometimes to find our authentic selves, we need to experiment a little bit with ourselves just to figure out who we really are, as long as it's legal and not too dangerous.
You're too funny. Well, and our next guest says that our style is a reflection of who we are.
That's right. Our guest is personal stylist Elizabeth Jones. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me today. I'm super excited.
Oh, good. And now you're going to show us just ways that we can sort of play around with our look a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I fully believe in statement accessories because whether you want to be simple or a little bit louder, they're really easy to change up your look and also kind of give a little taste of who you are. So I brought some things with me today to kind of show off.
You know, and you've said that, you know, we can show off who we are through our style.
Yes.
How explain that to me a little bit.
Well, I mean, whether you have a little bit of just a classic look and you like classic pieces, or if you like something a little bit more florally and loud, you know, it's fun to also, if that's your personality, to play around with who you want to be on a different day. So accessories can be really true to who you are, and it's lots of fun.
Yeah, and so does our age impact the type of accessories that we should be selecting?
It can. I think, again, it goes back to really who you are, and you know, you could be a little bit older and want something funky if that's who you are, and you should totally be true to who you are, because in style, if you're not true to who you are and you don't have something that doesn't reflect you, it's pretty obvious.
All right, so how can you change us up today?
Well, I brought some really fun things. So I'm going to start with this awesome handbag, because I just think that sometimes we overthink about what a statement is, and your handbag can be a statement. So
it's beautiful.
This is floral, it's fun. If this is something too loud, you know, you could just go with the solid, but this bag would work with either of your outfits.
Yeah.
So I mean, just throwing that on. And it like goes back to if that might feel too much for somebody. So just having a bag kind of show off and not have so much on you, it's a perfect way to make a statement.
Okay, what else?
Yeah, that's great.
Some great necklaces here as well. I have a really fun blue one and a really beautiful white one that's a little more toned down. Both of these would look awesome with, again, either of what you're wearing. I'm going to put this white one on you because I think it would be beautiful. Just a great combination. And I always say, too, I'm going to come this way. Keep some statements in your car. Sometimes that's easy, like to be on the go, because you could be wearing this from daytime and then maybe you want to go out and
I love
let's
that.
see.
Great idea.
Yes, and I love how with your other necklace on too, like this might be a little bit much, but you can have some fun with layers. So different necklaces that you could layer with could be fun.
Yeah, we wear our wisdom symbol pendants.
Yes.
And they're nice, but this is a statement, right?
Yes,
this
that's a
totally
statement.
changes my look.
Yes, and if you had something like a little bit more simple and a statement kind of necklace, maybe it's just a more of a gold necklace, you could totally layer with your pendant on.
Yeah, and I think that we tend to get stuck in a rut, don't you think, with our style?
We do.
So doing something like that helps to get you out of that.
And that's something too. It's also easy, even like the scarf I have here or a simple earring, just adding those kind of pieces in, it can totally change your look and you know, re-inspire you.
Can we try this one on Kim?
Yes, sure.
Just because I want the bag.
The fun babbles here.
We'll
That's what
share.
I call.
That's what we do as women, right?
And like I picture this even too, like if you're just going out to the beach and you have a fun date night or something.
Wow.
It's
Look
so
at
fun.
that. Oh, that looks great,
That
though.
is a statement.
But that looks so good.
And you could have something so simple on, just like, you know, a simple color, and that's it. You just dolls you up completely.
Wow.
You know, I wonder, I think sometimes we, as Kim said, we sometimes get stuck in a rut. And
Yes.
we also fall into that trap of, I shouldn't wear this because it's not my age,
Yes.
right? Don't we do that
Yes.
sometimes too? Talk to us a little bit about how you approach that with your clients.
Definitely figure out, you know, again, go back to what inspires you, and it's not always age. You have to feel completely comfortable in what you're wearing. And I say kind of go back to the basics and start in your closet. Figure out what inspires you. A lot of times there's gems in your closet that we forget about, like that staple denim jacket that's back there. It's a classic, and it's always age appropriate. So kind of find new ways to re-inspire those things to like adding a fun statement or adding a fun bag. So kind of figuring out back to basics, what inspires you, looking through magazines and things like that, just to get inspiration, because it's not age, it's what you're comfortable and confident in, and how you can reinvent new things.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for joining us. Great tips.
Thank you for having me. It was so much fun.
Wonderful. And go out and spread some joy today.